right, everybody. We've got another very special guest for you all. I want everybody to welcome to the show Kylar Merrell. Welcome, Kylar.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time for sitting with us. Your first time on the show. Chris and I are very appreciative that this is one of the shows where we got to talk about cooking and eating food because there's not a whole lot of crossover there with comic books and
Yeah.
cooking. So we'll talk about that in a second. I'm pretty
All right.
happy about that. We're going to put you through the gauntlet, with your first time being here. So give us your origin story of comics and then I guess how the whole comics and food thing came about.
Okay. My origin in comics was just I always wanted to be like a creator of some sort. But I always liked to write, always liked to draw. Most writing was kind of still is kind of my, I would say, my area of preference, just because I feel like I'm better at that than I am at art. But I've always liked both. I've always wanted to create in some way. And so I first, I was kind of into comics before this, but the big thing that kind of made me want to create in the comics medium was the New 52. I was a freshman in high school, and I
Nice.
got due to some extenuating circumstances, I lived overseas at the time. I had to come back to the States, and because of an injury, and so I was able to buy 4 issues of the New 52, and one of those was The Flash, by
Nice.
Francis Manapul and Brian Buccellato. And Francis Manapul's artwork was like single-handedly the thing that like got me into comics. It's not, I mean, it's, very much, DC standard superhero comic stuff, but it's
Right.
also not. And
Yeah.
it's very like beautiful in a different way. And it just really stuck with me. Like prior to that, I didn't really have an affinity for the Flash in particular or anything like that. It was just, his work just really stood out to me. And so I was like, okay, this is what I want to do now. Um, and it
He's
just,
sorry to cut in, but I'm not a big Flash fan. He is the perfect artist for the Flash.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the thing that still gets me is like his work, even like looking back, like it fits that character very well because just his work is very streamlined. It's very, I, it, I don't know how to explain it. Like it's very just, it feels like like motion. It's very dynamic, and in a way that I think really works, especially the way that he colors and the way that his colorists color him as well. I'm not sure if he colors all of his work or not, but anyway, I think he does because his work's very consistently colored the same way. But anyway, that was kind of the big thing. And then Comics from the Kitchen started last year as I wanted to do another anthology, and I wanted, somewhere it's just kind of stuck in my head, like, write what you love, that kind of thing. And I was like, okay, well, I like to cook. That's something I would like to do. How can I mesh these two things? And this is just what I found to be the perfect mesh of what I liked, what I wanted to make, and what I thought there was a space for in
Mhm.
the industry and the comics space. So
What I always find interesting about projects like this one in particular, is like in let's just call them American comics. You don't see a lot of diversity in this field, especially, but like a lot of it's we're getting more diversity in terms of like the stories we're telling in the indie space and everything, but it's still mainly dominated by superheroes, which we're not trashing superheroes. We love them. But one of the things that when I started to delve into like stuff like Japanese comics, manga, if you will, and other realms, was that diversity in storytelling is much more broad. And I always come back to the first like food comic I ever read was Delicious in Dungeon, which I really fell in love with because it's a similar thing where it's this story about like going into a dungeon and this fantasy world, kind of like a D&D story, but then like they eat the creatures inside of it and you get little like recipes and everything. And it was
sweet.
just a very interesting, different thing. So I guess my question at the end of that was like, have you ever read any of these types of books in the manga space that do this?
I haven't read a lot of books in the manga space. I've always wanted to check out Seconds. It's always been on my like list of things to read, you know. But I mean, when I think of food comics, the one that sticks out to me is more of an American comic. Is it's if I don't know if you've heard of Get Jiro.
Yes.
by
That's
Anthony Bourdain. Yeah, that's the
Hmm.
one that always sticks out to me. It's one of my favorites. And then he has another one, Hungry Ghosts, that's also kind of food themed, food
Yep.
oriented. And so I got that just not because I was a fan of. I guess it was because I was a fan of food in a way. It's more because I was a fan of his, and I just wanted to see his comic. I'd read his book Kitchen Confidential. I wanted to just see what his work was like in comics, and that was a big thing for me. But no, I haven't read any manga in that vein. But I do agree with you in that I like that manga has a much more diverse like genre. They definitely have their shonen things, you know, their Naruto's and their One Pieces and their Dragon Balls, but and then they have, you know, other genre, they've seinen and other things like that. But then they have plenty of sports things like Haikyuu and just all sorts of. There's just a lot more diversity in terms of topics and genre and people telling different types of stories in
Yeah.
manga that I think
Right.
we don't see a lot of.
yeah. It's
Yep.
something I really have
Mm-hmm.
been happy. I mean, I've gotten into some indie creators' heads with it, and
Mm-hmm.
even some have gotten into my head with it. Where like I think that's a space to dive into because there's always that like comics versus manga
Yep.
conversation, and I always kind of throw it aside like it's all comics, it's just where it's made. But I think one of the things that we can learn from manga is that like all that diversity, storytelling, all these different
Mm-hmm.
things. And when I see something like this, I just assumed that you were a manga fan because it did kind of like come off as like what those books are in a way. And like you said, you don't see it. And even Get Jiro, it's been a long time since I read it, but if I remember correctly, it's not like it's got recipes and stuff in it. It's
No.
more like a hero story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a like a story about a guy, and it just happens and it's like just a whole world that's all become based like the instead of mobs, the mob, it's like different food families, food mafia kind of
Yeah.
things that are all kind of going to
And
war with each other.
because you did an anthology here, did you, when you reached out to people, did you say like, give me a recipe that you have, or like, does everybody have their own recipe in there? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, that was all because I knew that when I came up with the idea, I knew that um I had this is you know I this is like in I've said this other places too, but I knew that I'd seen like I have a book over. It's actually on the floor right now because like I told you guys before, I'm in the middle of moving. But
Yeah.
it's called Let's Make Dumplings or Let's Cook Dumplings, and it's just like an illustrated cookbook in a comic book style, and it's really cool.
Oh, wow.
And it's full of recipes, and I've seen food themed anthologies before. Like I can't remember what it was. It was on Kickstarter, but I can't remember the actual title. They also had it was like a mixtape of some sort. Anyway, um, they so I'd seen those things. I just hadn't seen something that really combined those two, and so I knew I wanted to do an actual cookbook, but I also knew that I maybe it's imposter syndrome or maybe it's just me not feeling like I guess it's imposter syndrome at the end of the day, but whether that's right or wrong, I didn't think that I was the person to write an entire cookbook. I don't think I'm a good enough cook or like have enough interesting recipes to do that. And so I just knew that I wanted to crowdsource that and like let other people put their things in. And so the whole prompt when I first, I just accepted open submissions for this. And the whole prompt was just, we all have food memories. The memory food is really tied to a lot of our memories in terms of like, we all have something that we associate with a certain thing. Like I have a story in the anthology that's about fishing with my grandpa, and other people have recipes that they associate with different memories in their lives, and so it's about. I just wanted to see those stories and then let people just submit the recipe that goes with that story. And so it's pretty much whatever they wanted to do, whatever they had, I was cool with. Obviously there was a little bit of a process to like go through submissions and things like that, but I wasn't worried about like, oh, is this recipe like what I want or anything. It's just like, is this a good story? And then I think it's really benefited because um the the stories lift up the recipes because when you read the story, you get the recipe right afterwards. So like you get to see, I read this story, I see this person's memory of this recipe, and now I get to make that. And that, like I said, the story makes that recipe feel more important. You feel more connected to it, and it also works vice versa. And now that recipe helps me understand that memory and that story a little bit better. And so like it all kind of works together in this really great symbiotic relationship that like they
That's
build
cool.
on each other.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, I love the cover too because it makes me hungry. That's
Yeah, the cover's by Jerry Bennett. He's a local creator from here from Oklahoma. So he's a really really great dude.
that's awesome.
What made me hungry is your little video you put on the campaign.
Oh yeah,
I'm
that's
Where
glad.
it.
you,
Yes,
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
yeah, where you cook one of my favorite meals, which is shrimp scampi.
kind of. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more of a Cajun. It's the recipe. My girlfriend makes it all the time. It's like Cajun shrimp pasta, but it's basically shrimp scampi. You're right.
Yeah, it seemed like a twist on it because I don't
Yeah,
normally put peppers in my shrimp
yeah.
scampi, but now I want to.
Exactly. It's just gives it like a Cajun vibe. But yeah, that was just that was kind of one of the first things I had was like I know but before I even knew I was Zoop, I was like, okay, I have to have a video for whatever campaign, whatever platform I use. And I was like, I want to do like my own cooking video, and then at the end it's going to reveal and it's going to be the book. And that's like so I've had that idea since like the get-go. And so like to be able to film that and like put it all together was like a really cool little experience. And I put the little music to it and I made a little Ratatouille video, and it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think it's a great idea. And is this your first time working with Zoop? I know you said he's in anthology before, but was this your first time with them?
Yeah, this is my first time with Zoop. I've used Kickstarter successfully once before, but this started like when my first kind of inklings for this anthology were when Kickstarter had announced like their blockchain stuff, and so it was
Yeah,
like, oh,
right.
what's going to happen and all that stuff, and so that kind of got Zoop on the radar. And then after doing some more research into it, I kind of realized that Kickstarter is not really doing anything blockchain related. They just said that because that was the thing to do at the time, and so you know that's what got it on my radar, and it's been a different experience than Kickstarter. It has its pros and its cons. It's just been something different, I think, is the best thing to say.
Have they reached out to you at all and done anything to help with the campaign? Because I noticed with Zoop over Kickstarter, like it seems to be fewer projects are on the
Mm-hmm.
page, which allows it to kind of focus on a few projects as opposed to just being a giant dump of a ton of
Mm-hmm.
projects.
Yeah,
But has the company themselves like done anything special to help out?
I mean, that's one of the things with Zoop is that one of the draws of it is that they build the page for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they sent me a Google Drive folder, and like there's a folder for the art folder, for the video folder, and like there's a document that I have to fill it out with all the information and the people involved and all that kind of stuff. And they build out the whole page for me, so they did all that, and they do post about it on their social media pages and things like that, and help to promote it, as well as which is something like you said that Kickstarter doesn't do. But Kickstarter does have a wider base in general, but from what I've seen, and the little bit of badly done research that I've done, Zoop tends to have more backers per campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see how that plays out as far as working out for us and things like that. But yeah, it's just been a whole different platform, a whole different thing. But they do help out, and that's one of the draws of going with them, is that it is more of a curated platform.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm looking at your rewards here that you have, and you have a digital version, which is
Mhm.
always good. And then you have like a digital bundle, retailer bundle. I don't know if you want to talk about any of those rewards.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about any. We have the digital one. That's I had a previous interview yesterday or the day before or something with
Mm-hmm.
someone from the UK, and he was talking about how that's a big thing for them, is to have that digital, because for anyone who hasn't made a comic, printing shipping overseas is expensive, and
Yeah.
so that's a very big thing. For one, I'm just going to put that in there anyway. But two, it's a good thing to have for the international backers. It is something that Zoop doesn't. Zoop calculates the shipping for me, so I have no control over what Zoop charges international shipping rates for. And that's, again, like I said, there's pros and cons to the whole thing. But even if I got to do it myself, it would still be more expensive than domestic shipping. So that's just the way things go. But yeah, we have different bundles. you can get a digital bundle or a physical bundle, and get with the physical you can get all of the foreign press comics that we have available that we've previously printed. And then down at the bottom we also have add-ons where you can add any of those on digitally or in print if you're like, hey, I want to pick that one up, or I haven't picked that, or I don't want to, I already have that one, I don't need that one again, something like that. And the one that I do have is that I do like to talk about is the retailer bundle, just because you know, I last year I did a questionnaire. I sent it out to because like I said before, I did a little bit of research on just Kickstarter numbers, and I'm a big nerd, obviously, because I make comics, but just I'm a nerd in terms of like numbers and data about this kind of stuff.
Yep.
And a lot of stores, it's iffy whether or not stores are actually interested in backing a Kickstarter campaign or a Zoop campaign. But I still think it's important to include it. And 6 people have backed it, and that might just be a person who wants 5 copies, well, good for them, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I always like to put that in there because it's just something for because I want to get my book out to as many people as possible and to as many different locations. And I feel like that's a good way to do it. And then the only other odd thing is we have an ad. I'll put an ad in the back of the book if you back that tier, or add that as a thing. And that's the thing about Zoop, is that it's not tiers. It's just like a normal like an experience, like a online shopping experience. Like if you were shopping at Target.com or Amazon or whatever website, you just add to cart. So if you want to add 2 copies, you just click add. You just click the plus button 2 times. And so you don't have to worry about like the confusion of Kickstarter, like, oh, well, this tier comes with this, but this tier doesn't have that. It's just all right there.
Right.
Yeah.
You do it just like normal.
Nice. Yeah, that seems pretty convenient.
Yeah, it's funny you say that though, because as somebody who's been trained by Kickstarter, I still get confused by it.
Yeah, right. Because you have that muscle memory of I just click on it and it'll be all right.
I'm looking at like the ad in the back of the comic, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't come with the book, and it's because you probably had that, and then you can add on, or you can also purchase the book. So
yeah, I originally had it, and I do have like a bundle. Like I have the complete comics from the kitchen bundle. You get the book, and you get a print, and you get a handwritten recipe card. So like I did put a couple bundles in there, but yeah, that was something when I was building the campaign that was hard to do, because my muscle memory did the same thing where I was like, okay, let me put this bundle. And this one includes all the other previous rewards, and this one includes all. And I was like, no, can't do that. That's not how this works.
Right.
Just do this one's just an ad. And so,
yeah,
making that work that way has been interesting.
So you got a bunch of recipes in the book, and you show some of them alongside kind of the comic that's with it on the page.
Yeah.
If you're able to, like, what's your favorite recipe that got submitted?
Well, I will first give myself a caveat. I have not been able to make any recipes yet, because like I said, I'm in the middle of moving, and I'm a school teacher, so I just got done teaching and then immediately got into the moving process, and so it's been chaos. And I haven't been able to yet. But one of the ones that I am really excited by, that really excited me when I first saw it, was I don't know if it's on the page or not. Let me scroll and look. It is the Melanie Charlotte cannoli cream layer cake. I really like that one because the story that goes with it, and this goes back to what I said, that the stories raise the recipes and the recipes raise up the stories, is that it's this really cute childhood memory from Rowena that is about her it's birthday cake for when it's too hot to bake is the title of her story. And so it's just like, as a child, she wasn't able to have a lot of birthday cakes because it was too hot to bake. Her mom was like, I can't do this. This is too hot right now. I can't make this. Right. Or I'll, like, if I buy you make an ice cream cake like you want, like, it's just going to fall apart and melt by the time we actually have the birthday. So like, it was something that she couldn't have. And so she basically made up her own cake. She was like, she loved to bake. And so she's like, I'm going to do this for myself. And that's, like I said, that goes back to that thing that I really love about the book, is that we get to see that thing that she did for herself. It's something that she did as a child and has a very special place to her. And it just goes up with that. And then the other one is, it's not on the page, but is Jimmy Gasparo. He put his dad's meatball recipe in there.
Oh,
and
cool. Nice.
The reason I really like that one is more of a reason that readers won't understand, is because when he first uploaded his script for me to look at and everything, I had a Google Drive folder with everybody had their folder for their stories. And for his artist, he uploaded multiple reference photos of himself and his dad and his daughter making the recipe. And so it was just really cool to see that, first of all, to see that much like love and dedication put into it, that he went and made the recipe with his dad again and took pictures of it and documented it. And then once I saw the final product, it was really cool to see those things actually, like, I was like, okay, I can tell that that's his dad. Like I can see that that's actually him in the book. And so it was just like a really cool thing to see that someone else had like put that much dedication into the
Mm-hmm.
story.
That's cool.
And like I said, that's something that, readers won't get that level of it because they just won't have access to, the folder and everything like that. But just for me, knowing that that's there is just really awesome. And then if I can say one more, it was
Oh yeah, go for it.
the third one. I'm going to be selfish and say it's my own, because this story is all about the anthology is all about food memories. And my grandfather, I wrote this story a while ago, and then since writing it and since drawing it, before I even finished the full thing, I was almost done. I hadn't lettered it yet, and he passed away. And so to like be able to finish that and to see like that extra thing, to like have that level of catharsis that came with it, it just felt really good for me. It was a really good way for me to be able to deal with things. And then and then it was another level that was awesome was I posted it on my Instagram story, the first page, and my brother saw it, and it's all about fishing and cooking fish and hush puppies with him. And my brother saw the page and he was like, oh, he texted me. He's like, is that Mr. Miller's pond? And is that Papa's pickup? And I was like, yeah. And it was cool to me to know that he saw it and
Yeah,
recognized what I was doing,
that's awesome.
and to know that it brought out something in him too. And that was, like I said, for selfish reasons, that was one of my favorites, just because it meant a lot to me to be able to make that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that makes me think of like recently I lost my grandmother at the beginning of the year, and one of the things I was able to get out of her before she passed away was the sauce recipe from our family, because she's born in Italy.
Okay.
And so I have that now that I
Yeah.
still haven't attempted, but like
Mhm.
I have it, and I'm so happy that I did, because it just, the idea brings back memories of a child
Exactly.
going back to Pennsylvania where she lived, and she was making the sauce and making spaghetti and all this stuff. So yeah, that memory rings true with me, because I had something similar happen
Yeah.
just this year.
Yeah. And it goes back to what I was saying, how how the stories help with the recipes, is that the hush puppy recipe is a little bit more intense. I have his hush puppy recipe in there, which came out of a bag, and the fish is still out of a package mostly. But I've since upgraded the hush puppy recipe with a recipe of my own that I prefer. But the fish recipe is not complicated. It's the fish, and it's a bagged fish fry recipe that, it's not like I'm giving away some secret family thing, but
Yeah, right.
I think that once you see that story with it, it gives you a little bit of an appreciation for that story and for that recipe a little bit.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Makes me interested in the book even more. I mean, just the fact that there's recipes in it, like,
it's cool. Yeah, it's really
yeah.
cool.
And it adds something to it. As somebody, Mike and I were talking before the show, like, we both kind of enjoy cooking
Mm-hmm.
in different ways, and having another recipe book. Like, I mean, I buy random recipe books all the time. And I remember a few months back, they released the Seinfeld recipe book.
Yep.
And like, I bought that just so I
Yeah.
could make Kenny Rogers chicken. Like,
Love it.
There you go.
So it's a cool addition to the book that I interests me even more, or just as much, if not more, than the stories themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
to hear that the stories kind of tell a story about the recipe makes it even more intriguing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the price is killer for 200 plus pages of comics.
Yes.
$22, everybody. Come on, that is insane.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that every day.
Yep. The only thing that make it better is if it was a hardcover, and it's not. But we do what we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got to ask you too. So you have here as one of the bundles or one of the add-ons, maybe both, a handwritten recipe card. How many of these handwritten recipe cards are you writing?
As many as I have to. If I have to
Love
do
it.
50, I'll do 50. I don't.
Nice.
I mean,
Nice.
I'll get tired of it, but I'll do it. And I mean, they won't all be the same recipe. I'll mix it up for myself, to make it a little bit more interesting for me. So I'm not writing the same recipe 50 times, but as many times as I have to, I'll do it.
That's awesome. All right, you heard that,
Amazing.
everybody. So bump those numbers. Let's go.
Exactly that.
Everybody get those recipe cards. I want him
Give me
writing
carpal
1,000
tunnel.
recipe cards.
Let's go. Yeah, this has been great, Kyler. Man, this is awesome. Very interesting project for us to talk about. It seems like every Zoop project we talk about is just really cool. It's a new approach with comics, something that we don't see out, in the stores today regularly. So yeah, we're glad to have you on. And, our listeners, our viewers, if they want to follow you and all the stuff you're doing, where can we send them?
The best place is on Twitter, which is where at F Press Comics is. Kind of the whole Foreign Press thing is at Foreign Press F Press Comics, and Foreign Press Comics on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, which I'm kind of experimenting with, and YouTube, which I hope to get into. My goal is for kind of this year, is to get into more live streaming. So we'll see how that goes. But
Okay, cool.
that's still up in the air because, like I said, I'm in the middle of a lot of stuff right now. So whether or not that actually comes to fruition after my brain has settled down, we'll see if that actually happens. But that's kind of the best place because we do have quite a few interesting things going on and some fun stuff happening. So
cool.
It's the best place.
Awesome.
To go.
Cool. So everybody out there, as you know, links in the show notes down below to the Zoop campaign. Check it out. The book looks really cool. Like we've been saying the whole time, the combination of two things we love is always great. So make sure to check out the campaign, back it, get some cool recipes and some cool comics. So Kylar, thanks so much for taking the time, man, to stop here and talk with us, and we appreciate it. And best of luck with the campaign.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.